Okay, so for people tuning in, maybe a quick recap of what Sanya has been up to in the last 10 years. So, me and Sanya crossed paths in 2013. That's the first time we met. This was at a time at Bain, at the BCC. We overlapped from 2010 to 2015. And then, of course, we kept crossing paths when we were both in Gurgaon for a few years after. Um, you were at Bain you've been at Bain ever since, but different, parts of Bain. You started in the BCC in 2013. You moved over to India Consulting in 2015. 2019 is when you moved to the US for business school. You went to Wharton. You were one of the COVID batches or the COVID batch, which started in person, didn't go in person in the between, and then ended in person, I think. And post that, you moved to Chicago and are still at Bain.
Yes.
And that's where you are right now. So
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about all of that in the podcast. But maybe a good place to start, or with that, you've been at Bain for almost all your working professional life.
Yeah.
What about Bain has kept you there? I'm sure there's something
Oh,
amazing about it, which has kept you for all these years.
it's an interesting question. I mean, I think like when I was in Bain India, so the Bain India chapter was almost, call it like 4.5, or was it 5.5? 5.5 years.
Hmm.
Um, I think for a long part of those 5.5 years, like I would think of Bain in sort of short time increments, right? Like there was always
Mhm.
something to new and interesting to seek out. So I mean,
Yeah,
at the very start, like our first 2 years that you and I overlapped, like really good company, good culture,
correct. Lots of free food.
people, lots of free food, lots of like fancy places to go for trainings
Yeah,
and offsites and just really, really good people. Honestly,
yeah,
like BCC felt like an extension of college, which is
correct.
not something I ever expected work to feel like.
Hmm.
To like, go into your first working experience, like find amazing friends and people like you are still in touch with, like the fact that you and I are doing this podcast 11 years later, like,
Yeah,
it's there are and there's so many of them. Like if I bump into any person from like BCC 11 years ago, I would be super fond of them and then that's kind of a part of why I guess the entry into Bain felt so nice. And
hmm.
also like it was interesting work in those first 2 years. Like it was a new industry every time, a new problem, new sets of people. Your team is changing every 3, 4 like months. So it was interesting. So I think like for the first, so obviously the base was there that, okay, this is a good company, good culture, great people, interesting problems, like where you can learn, all of that was there. And then even after the 2 years, like I think I would view my Bain India life in sort of the next 6 month increments. Like
Hmm.
I would be like,
Review cycles.
well, that was a big part of Bain India life, which I mean, I wish I thought about it lesser, but not just in terms of reviews, but it was like, oh, like okay, 2 years at BCC. I want to try to get into India Consulting, or
Yeah,
now I'm at India Consulting. Like, oh, like I want to try to get a transfer opportunity and do this
yeah.
in a different geography the moment I'm eligible. Or now I want to go and try an early promotion. Like, it was very
Hmm.
like a mix of either performance oriented, like things you were seeking, or just growth oriented, go to a different geography, etc. Like you were
Yeah.
just thinking of it in every like 6 month increments. And it was like a path that a lot of people were on. Like you sort of saw a lot of
Yeah.
people staying in BCC, Bain, India for a bit, and then applying to business school. And you kind of
Yeah.
felt like, yeah, this generally feels like a direction I want to go in, so I'll continue.
Hmm.
Um, I think that was a big part of what kept me at Bain, India, while I was there.
Hmm.
Um, and I think post Bain India, like obviously I was sponsored for the MBA, so I had to do 2 years
Hmm.
from like once I returned to be in Chicago, which was now almost 3 years ago. So
Hmm.
2 years was almost like a commitment period. I didn't have a
Yeah.
choice. But I think like now, I think the Bain, the part of my Bain innings, the second innings, I've been asking myself like longer term questions, right? Like, what is keeping
Hmm.
me here? What do I want out of this time? Like, where do I see my
Hmm.
career going? I don't think I paused as much to think about that in Bain
Hmm.
India. It was like
Hmm. Do
all
you
of that
see
makes sense.
like the Bain US as like a different company, or in your mind, it's still? Do you tell yourself like, oh, I'm still at Bain, or I'm at Bain, or for you, is it like, oh, Bain India was like almost a different experience, and now Bain Chicago is, yeah, it's a different company. It's a fresh start. It's a new set of people. Like, do you see it as two different? Like you said, it's two innings, but it's two innings of the same match. Like, do you see it
Yeah.
as the same match, or it's a different matches?
I see it as the same match. So I very much think like, oh, Sanya, you only ever worked at one place, which is Bain. So it's the same because Bain feels like Bain, no matter where you go, which is a
Yeah.
good thing. So which makes like
Hmm.
new offices feel familiar enough and easy enough to get. I mean, that also doesn't hurt that there are like 20,000 people in Bain, Chicago who were originally Bain, India. So you know
Yes.
a lot of people. So it's less new, I suppose. But I think it's a new innings because I think there's like a different version of me that was in Bain, India, and that is in Bain, Chicago.
Hmm.
Um, so that has kept it interesting, but obviously, like, still very much now thinking of the bigger questions of like what's keeping me here and
Hmm.
all of that. But yeah.
I know a lot of people who are listening to this probably knew Sanya at Bain India. So what is the biggest difference in Sanya at Bain Chicago versus Sanya at Bain India? If there was one
Well,
thing you wanted to highlight,
um,
or if not one thing you want to highlight, maybe one thing somebody who met you today, who knew you from Bain India, what do you think would be that one different thing they would
oh my
experience?
God. It's a hard question. I'm just thinking about like what my friends in Chicago who can actually make that comparison.
Yeah. Or what would you want it to be?
um I think I'm much less motivated by or driven by I still stress about it and I still
Hmm.
worry about it. So that has the stress and worry isn't gone. But it's not like I'm solving for, my performance is not the only thing I'm solving for.
Hmm.
So I think there's much more awareness of like wanting to live a fuller life. Because
Hmm.
I think in your first in my Bain India time, like I would be that person who would stay till like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. sometimes when I didn't have to.
Hmm.
Uh, Either because I was sometimes truly just like really interested in the work and had
Hmm.
all that fire and passion to be like, no, I'm going to just keep on solving this. Or like I was
Yeah.
motivated by, no, I just really want to do well and I'll just do
Yeah.
this. I think now it's like, do I care about how I'm doing? Sure. But I think I care much more about how I'm feeling at work
Hmm.
and whether that means like, am I being able to live like a life outside of work? Like um, how fulfilled am I feeling, slash how stress is work making me, like asking all of those things I'm paying much more attention to than
Hmm.
the version of me that was there in Bain India. And I think that paying attention to those things has made me make a couple of choices over the last 3 years in Bain Chicago that I'm not
Hmm.
sure like Bain India me would have made. So
Hmm. Give me an
um
example.
like basically, I was in 2022, which was about a year in to be in Chicago. I was a manager here,
Yeah.
and I think I was a 6 month manager, which
What
meant
does
I
that mean?
was basically like you're a consultant for 2 years,
Yeah.
and then what we used to call CTL back in
Hmm.
the day is now manager. So you're a consultant
Okay.
for 2 years, you're a manager for 1 year, and then you hit the promotion point of being promoted to senior manager.
Got it.
So those 3 years are like tenure based. You have to go through those 3 years and then like it's the big promotion of
Mm.
becoming an SM or whatever. So I was a 6-month manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so technically 6 months away from the pretty big promotion point.
Yeah.
But I was not necessarily feeling either that motivated in what I was doing. But more than that, like I've become like professionally over the last more than, and you and I spoke about this in 2022, I think. Um, I've become very interested in this space of like organization culture, behavior
Mm.
change, leadership. And this role came up in 2022, which was an internal role,
Mm.
um, which I was like, it was to become like the manager of culture and behavior change. And
Mm.
I was like, oh, I absolutely want to do this.
Mm.
And a lot of partners at Bain Chicago kind of advised me not to do it at that
Mm.
time. They were like, you should absolutely do this, but like just go past the senior manager hurdle and then do it.
And
Um,
what was the rationale that it would sort of inhibit your,
yeah,
I don't know, your
basically
momentum
because
of,
it's a,
of
yes. So one momentum, and like HR officially told me that your promotion will happen like 6 months later, or you will be considered for promotion
got
six
it.
months later because internal role you don't have as much client interaction and like
Yeah.
whatnot. And so like I think just that was an example of like, okay, I'm hearing from everyone that I shouldn't be doing this. It's
Mm.
going to technically push out whatever performance and trajectory I'm on. But
Mm.
I don't care. Like this is still the thing I want to, this is the kind of work I want to do. These are the people I want to
Mm.
work with. So the consequences of when that promotion point happens and if the momentum breaks, which it did. So when I came
Mm.
back, it was harder to get back into the swing of things and actually work towards the promotion point. It was
Mm.
pretty challenging, but I was just like, it doesn't matter. And I don't know if like that's something I would have done as easily or at
Mm.
all in Bain India. Um, the other example is more recent, where I've asked to go on a full leave because I think I need time off for my health. But
Mm.
again, another, not going into details there, but those are, I think, things where I think I'm just paying more attention to what I want, what I'm solving for, how I'm feeling
Mm.
versus some like one path that I
Mm.
need to be going on, I suppose.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard this sort of broad like theme from so many people on this podcast,
Yeah.
and like for me, the it's actually quite similar. So I have two
Hmm.
questions which I want to get your view, which are questions which I wrestle with.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll give you some context about myself. For me, I
Yeah.
think this big shift happened during COVID,
Yeah.
um, and maybe it was a feature of like just working at startups, but like when I had sort of left my when I had left Zillingo, which is peak pandemic and whatever, I had a year to do nothing. I realized that over these last whatever 8 9 years, I had put 120% of myself into my work,
Yeah.
and like for what?
Why?
I mean,
Yeah.
I grew quite a bit. I
Yeah.
financially secure, whatever, as financially secure as a 28-year-old can be.
Yeah.
So all of that was really good, but it came at a cost of all of these other things, which at the time did not seem as quote unquote costs. But I guess
Yeah.
after, like, when layoffs were happening and when sort of this
Hmm.
piece was revealed, wherein like you can work on something for a really long time and poof, it's just going to go away, or like the
Yeah.
company will go belly up.
Yeah.
I was like, my God, like this is crazy, right? So,
Yeah.
so that is sort of my sort of point where I was like,
Yeah.
oh fuck, post this, I don't think I can go back to
Yeah.
being like 100% in my work. So first question is, I'm curious to know what that, if you remember that point, or like that moment wherein before that you were like, oh, 100% to work, and after that you're like, oh, it's hard to go back. And the second one I want to know, which is a question I wrestle with, do you
Hmm.
feel you become less ambitious, and does that bother you?
um, First of all, I want to say that it's a very good, you ask really good questions. I feel
Oh.
like people, um, so that's, yeah, it's something I really appreciate in people. So That's something I was saying. But do I remember a point when it clicked? I'm trying to think. I don't know if there was a point, Ruben. Like, I think it's been a bit of a journey. Like, I think moving to the US, going through 2 years
Mm.
of business school, um, then starting in Bain, Chicago, which while it is the same company,
Mm.
the US does have a, like, compared to India, more sustainable culture. It's still not
Mm.
as sustainable as, obviously, it's still fairly unsustainable often. And it's
Yeah.
not where, say, it could be in Europe or whatever, but it's more sustainable. And I feel like it's a journey because I think parts of it was just taking a break, right? Like
Mm.
between going at it 5 years continuously in Bain India, you're kind of just you're not questioning how you're operating. You're just used to operating in a particular way. So if I
Mm.
started in BCC by like burning the midnight oil, it just continued, right?
Mm.
And then a like natural break came in between with business school. And with business school, I I think I mentioned this to you in my voice note, but like it's a business school that you are surrounded by so many people who are just so absolutely fantastic at
Mm.
what they do. They've all been high achievers. Um, you kind of feel like, wait, why am I here? Like, how am I here? Right? You get imposter syndrome hits pretty hard. You start
Mm.
doubting how you made it here.
Mm.
Um, and like eventually at some point, and you see like failures of some sort, right? Like
Mm.
an internship interview that didn't work out, or like something you really wanted, like a position that you were very excited about that didn't go your way. And then you start it's difficult, but I think I left by the time I left business school, I was like, it's fine. Like I'm like middle of the pack, in a sea of like overachievers, and that's fine. It's okay. So I think the
Yeah.
first point of like just that journey and then starting at Bain Chicago and like getting like a normal average rating, you just like it starts normalizing, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, that's first of all, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. And second of all, like you just see people around you, and that's the point of like how Bain US had a more sustainable culture. Like people are doing more with their time than just work. Like
Yeah.
you are seeing people very actively like prioritize their families, their kids, like making it back in time for putting their kids to bed or
Yeah.
what have you. So like in Bain India, a lot of people who were senior managers were like, I don't know, not married, they didn't have like kids, like it was younger people. But here
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people just prioritizing a lot of different parts of life. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really long answer to the fact that it wasn't one point, but it's been more like bit
Mm.
by bit. um the other thing, I guess, and I think in this the journey towards how my relationship with ambition, right? Like I think that also relates to all these things in business school and after. I think I went for a family vacation when I was in India consulting in like 2017, and it was my sister, her boyfriend, and my parents and I, and we were in Kerala, and
Mm.
we were in one of those houseboats, and I'm
Mm.
technically off, and I had my laptop open, right? And I
Yeah.
was doing some work, and she was looking at me like I'm an alien. Like we went to Munnar after that, and they all went to go look at some tea farms or whatever, and I'm like, I have work, and I don't
Yeah.
even remember why I was working. Like I think I would have had approved vacation.
Yeah.
So so like she made all these observations and like, what are you doing to yourself? Like this is not like life. And my mom used to keep telling me this thing when I was in India, like, you should be living life as the order of things should be health, like health, relationships, work, and you
Yeah.
live your life as work, relationships, health, right? So people have made all these observations along the way, but I just feel like when you're in momentum, or when you're just doing things, which I was
Yeah.
what I was doing for 5 years, you don't pause and you don't change. And then I think the break in between helped to like
Mm.
question some of those unhealthy patterns.
So what about ambition? Like, do you feel
Oh,
you are less
sorry.
ambitious?
I
And
didn't even get there. But yes, I do. I do. And I think
does that bother you?
it does and it doesn't. So it's interesting, right? Like, I think for the last few years, I've been telling myself my narrative is
Mm,
that I overworked and did a lot of work for a long time. Like, work is was I was solving for work above everything else.
mm,
And now I am like pursuing a much like more balanced life.
mm,
And in this balanced life, like something's got to give. So I am okay to leave at 6 p.m. I don't want to, you know, I'm not solving from some crazy trajectory or
mm,
whatever. But then I'm like, and that part of it is like me making sense out of the choices I made, right? But then sometimes
mm,
I question, like, is there a version of me that still has more ambition that
mm,
would get ignited if I leave this job and this company, right?
mm.
Like, is it that my Bain time has come to an end?
Yeah,
And I need to find myself and find that fire again in a different environment.
yeah,
Um, or is it truly that I'm like okay with a less ambitious
mm,
version? And I think maybe the answer is somewhere in between because
mm.
yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What is your uh, journey with this ambition situation been
Yeah.
over the
I
last few
think
years?
ever since I left Zilingo and I've been in my current sort of job, I think like that's a big question. I would say wrestle with
Yeah,
for a few sort of reasons. Um, like if you think about we are like in our early 30s, right? 10 years, like we've been in the workplace just for 10 years, and that's maybe like a third, a fourth of our entire working career.
yeah,
So like we've not even just got like and like now I would say you're at a point wherein you fully like quote unquote graduated from university. You have some skills,
yeah,
you have some awareness, right? You know yourself. More importantly, I think you're like kind of I won't really say secure, but you're much more comfortable with, financially you're in a bit of a better
yeah,
spot. um
yeah,
you're surrounded with people. I think more importantly, you're very comfortable in your own skin, so you care
hmm,
a little bit less about what people have to tell you. And
yeah,
at least that's how I feel.
hmm,
um so I'm like, oh, this is a very interesting point to be, right? Like a lot of things are like in place.
yeah,
But I guess, like, similar to you, I think most people in their 20s really don't ask themselves, hey, what do I want to do? Like, it's
yeah,
more like just checking these things. And it's rightly so. Like, you don't have a
yeah,
lot of these things, and therefore you just mindlessly check them off, right?
yeah,
And to an extent, I think it's good because,
hmm,
those things help you get there. But I feel the
hmm,
muscle which we did not exercise at all is you get to this point, which is the end of the line, and you're like, okay, now what?
yeah,
Um, and then these are questions of, and I think you also have 10 years of like data to show what worked and what didn't work. Like,
yeah,
burning the midnight oil for something you didn't really care about probably wasn't worth it.
yeah,
But I'm very capable of burning the midnight oil if there is something it requires me to do. So I know I can do that, but maybe doing
yeah,
it for something I don't care about is not worth it.
yeah,
So with all of these things, yeah, I'm at this point wherein I think, yes, I feel like right now I behave as though I'm not very ambitious.
yeah,
I would like to change that, but
hmm,
I want to be like clear on what that ambition is and be
yeah,
really like think it through on, whatever I pursue, like you said, will come at a cost of something.
yeah,
And
yeah,
right now I'm just like, hey, for what, like, what are those things where I'm, say, willing to wake up at 7 a.m., like,
yeah,
or willing to maybe not see family for a while, or
yeah,
maybe, yeah. So yeah, I think I do feel less ambitious. I would like to change that, but
yeah,
I feel like, yeah, it's a bit of a, like, what do you want to be ambitious about?
yeah,
And sometimes, people have said I want to be ambitious, that I really want to live a good balanced life across all, pillars of my life. Like that's my
yeah,
ambition, to truly be balanced.
yeah,
And you take pride in that, hey, I can be a good, employee, you can be a good
yeah,
son, you can be a good partner, you can be a good, member of community.
yeah,
And I do decently well in all these aspects, and that is my ambition. So maybe that's
yeah,
one way to define it.
yeah,
But no, I think I for me, like, I've realized that I get a lot of fulfillment, a lot of meaning on the work I do. Like the way
Yeah.
at least I tell it to myself is I spend 8 hours a day doing something, and I should really really care about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am. I don't have
That's
an answer,
interesting.
but I think it's something I wrestle quite a bit with. I remember I was
Yeah.
talking to Nishtha about this
Yeah.
a few episodes ago,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think what I told her is when I speak to people on this podcast, and I've included, I feel like people sometimes feel like they've just given up. Like there were these bunch of ambitious people, and they just reached this point where they're like, "Fuck it, we don't care anymore." And she's like, "That's probably not the case. It's probably like people have realized that there are many other things which are important, and quote unquote ambition means like it probably means something different now." So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's like, what is the evolving definition of ambition? Because I think maybe we viewed it like more simply earlier in the way that like
high paycheck, high
high,
designation, manage lots of
yeah,
people,
yeah,
success.
exactly. Like, oh, and you were trying to your point, like, you're just trying to prove something to
Yeah,
yourself, to people, and like check the boxes. But after a
yeah,
point, you've checked the major boxes,
yeah,
right? And then you're like, what more am I trying to prove? And
yeah,
and then it's like, oh, like to your point, like it needs to meet a higher bar if you
yeah,
are spending those 3 hours that could be traded off to like spend an evening with your partner or your friend or your family.
yeah.
It needs to meet a higher bar, because you're not
Correct.
going to do like, we were just solving, at least I was just solving for work at the expense of a lot of other things.
Yeah,
And now I think you're not. So maybe you feel less ambitious, but I don't know.
yeah. And I guess to be honest, I'm quite keen to see how the next 5-10 years pan
Yeah.
by. I think for people who have had this realization, my bet would be is to the external world, they seem very ambitious and they like their results actually show that. But
Yeah.
if you ask them, I think they would be saying that, you know, yeah, we're not really ambitious. We just want to make sure we do enough on all aspects of life. And because they
Yeah.
can sort of maintain that balance, they end up doing, much above average than most people on, one single. Of course, there will be outliers, but I would like to
Yeah.
believe that that is the case.
Yeah.
Like an example of which I've, come across, at least working in Singapore, is,
Yeah.
when we were in Bain,
Mm.
I don't know. I do not have a vivid memory of working with a lot of working mums.
Yeah.
But now when I've
Same.
come to sort of Singapore, and
Hmm.
maybe it's a post-pandemic thing, etc. Like I feel like working mums are like the most efficient like person to work with.
Oh,
Like
it's
they have
true.
no time for drama, and they have
Yeah.
no time for like this bullshit. Like that, I'm gonna come, I'm gonna get my stuff done, and I'm gonna go back because my kids need me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they are really, really successful. It's not
Yeah.
that, like before coming to Singapore, I had this perception that maybe you have to make a compromise between family and, work. And, it's not true. Um, so anyway, that's,
Yeah.
I would say, the whole spiel and shebang of,
Yeah.
of motivation and ambition.
It's interesting for sure.
Okay. Uh, let's, I do want to come back to the point you mentioned about being middle of the pack. I think that's a very
Mm.
interesting phrase you sort of highlighted. But maybe let's shift gears a little bit. Mm, you went to Wharton from 2019 to
2019.
2021.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, was it always the plan for you to do, consulting, go to business school, move to maybe like the US? Your sister's been in the US for a long time. Was that always part of the plan, or what was sort of Sanya thinking getting into Bain in 2013? Because to me, it seems like, at least knowing
Yeah.
you, it
Yeah.
seems like there was a pretty clear plan on what Sanya wanted
No.
to do. Uh, no, really?
No, I've never been a planned out person, Reuben. So
Six months
no.
6 months at a time.
Yeah, genuinely. That's all I was solving for. It was the next 6 months to next 1 year, maybe 6 months. And I think like even when I joined, like for 2 years at BCC, the plan was just to get into India consulting. That's all I knew.
Correct.
I wasn't thinking beyond India consulting. And then
Yeah.
once I was in India consulting, I was thinking of different things I could do with this experience.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think I'm trying to remember, like when I took that sabbatical,
Hmm.
which was at my 5 year mark at Bain, India, including BCC. I think that was around 2018 that I took the 6 month
Hmm.
sabbatical. And maybe few months before that, a critical enough mass of people around me at Bain India had either left for business
Hmm.
school or were applying. And, it was a little bit of that general energy of
Yeah.
people around me in Bain and people outside of me, like from undergrad and stuff, who were thinking of the same things.
Yeah.
That the moment I decided to just take a step back from work for 6 months, um, I think I instantly in the sabbatical, like first month was like, okay, I should start prepping for my GMAT. Like it wasn't, and then again, I'd lived in the US for the 6 months during my transfer when I
Yeah.
came to Atlanta. So I'd kind of experienced the life,
Yeah.
but it was not like this was the plan. And, I
Hmm.
didn't know I would have like a US chapter to my life. Um, so I don't know.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
How? So you moved to the US for business school, and I know
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned in the voice note that it was a big change because this also meant you living by yourself.
Yeah.
What have you liked the most about living by yourself, and what do you like the least?
Hmm. What do I like the most? Um, I actually like the quiet, which is interesting because I'm like fairly extroverted and I like
Yeah.
really my energy. I get my energy from people, but I mean, would I love to live with my family again? Yes, I went back in COVID time when
Yeah.
business school shut down, and I was with them again for 7 8 months, and I loved it. But now in my life here, like the last 3 years when I've been living by myself, I like coming back to a space that's my
Hmm.
own, that has my personality, that has like, you know, just my space,
Hmm.
and where I can find like quiet and like all of that. So
Hmm.
that's been good. Um, Unexpected. Um, I really like that I've become more independent over the last three
Hmm.
years. And I think that has come because I've been living by myself.
Yeah.
Like in Wharton, I had a roommate who was like my absolute soul sister kind of a thing. We
Hmm.
didn't know each other before, but we got along like we knew each other from another life. But so I didn't live alone in Wharton.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the last 3 years in Chicago, I've become much more independent. Which is I think big part is because I live alone. What do I not like? That's a good question.
Or what
Um,
have you found like the most challenging part? And apart from the
mm,
fact that, oh my God, I got to do all the dishes and I got to clean. Yeah,
I
everybody
was
knows
literally
that.
doing the dishes before this podcast. I was like, let me get this thing clean. This is important. What do I not like? I think there's just with living alone, because I was like living with family for so many years.
Hmm.
It's just like there's a lot of decision fatigue that has settled in the last
Hmm.
3 years. I mean, I think I'm anyway a little bit of a perfectionist slash maximizer and indecisive person. So
Hmm.
anyway, it's not the easiest thing for me to just like make decisions because
Yeah.
I'm trying to solve for too many outcomes. But like with living alone, being in a different country, managing everything on your own, there's just too many decisions to take. And sometimes it's just nice to have another person to take those decisions with. Uh,
Or what is a decision you're currently, procrastinating on?
I've, I mean, there is a couch in my living room which I have wanted to change for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
I've known this couch must go, but every time I get on, I like choose a couple of options. I'm like, not convinced, I don't pull the plug. So
Hmm.
it's an example of a stupid decision that I haven't acted on, but um, you know, yeah. And there are lots of
Interesting.
other smaller and bigger decisions, Reuben.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I've
but
never heard that one. Decision fatigue. I have a lot of decision fatigue.
yeah,
Yeah, for example, like, yeah, like random stuff. I need to buy this for the house. I need to buy some organizer for the kitchen, and it's just
yeah,
been like every time I open that kitchen, and it's fucking pissing off because I open it. I'm like, Ruben, you've still not done it. And then 6 months later, I'm like, Ruben, it's been 6 months. You've been telling the fucking organizer cost $2. Just buy
yeah,
it. And I'm
yeah,
like, oh no, I got to figure out exact size and do the measurement and how
yeah.
many. And
Oh God.
the cupboard is still a mess.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Do you think what is it? Is it perfection or is it what stops you?
I
What's
mean,
the
I know I'm
sim?
a fucking miser. I don't like to spend money. So,
There you go.
so maybe that I'm like, if it's working, it's working, Ruben. Like,
Yeah.
you can't go down this path of perfecting everything.
Oh,
But then I scroll Instagram, and I'm sure you've come across these organizing videos on Instagram, right?
yeah.
Oh my God, that's like endless nth degree of organizing. The second
Yeah.
big genre is cleaning of the house. Like, some
Oh
of these
God.
cleaning equipments are so good, and like I will obsess about that shit. And then the third one I obsess about is lamps, like these very
About what?
nice vibey lamps. So there's
Lamps.
this,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, like there are
Love
these,
it.
I would say, rabbit holes in Instagram. I find myself,
Yeah.
which is why I need to get off of Instagram. I only got back on Instagram because of this damn podcast, and I
Oh
landed up
no.
in these rabbit holes of
Rabbit hole.
home lighting and shit like that. Anyway, so the
Yeah.
favorite part is just spending time with yourself, in
Hmm.
quiet. Least favorite part is decision fatigue. Hopefully, the next time I see you, we have a new couch.
This is true.
Yeah,
You need to come to Chicago to
yeah.
meet all
What do
of
you like the
us.
most about Chicago? I know a lot of
Oh,
BCC people, a lot of Bain India crowd have landed up there. It's a little diaspora.
it is a
Um,
diaspora. Yes.
what do you like about life in Chicago?
Oh, I love the city.
Yeah.
The lake has my heart. There's a lake front trail that goes right next to Lake Michigan, and
Hmm.
it's there's 20 miles that is
Oh.
walking and for walking, biking, running, whatever,
Hmm.
and it's the most beautiful part of Chicago. So I wake up to that view. I
Hmm.
started biking when I moved to Chicago. Like I biked when I was a kid,
Okay.
just normally, but
Yeah.
I really got into biking when I got here, and
Oh wow.
it gives me so much joy to just go on a bike ride by myself. Like it's also like something I do often do by myself.
Hmm.
Or I started as an activity I do by myself, and I mean I don't think I would have found that love for biking or all of that if it wasn't for Chicago.
Hmm.
Um, so I
And by
think
biking, is it are you like into biking? Like,
no, no, no,
you
no,
have this
just
road bike?
leisurely. No,
Oh,
no,
okay,
no, no,
okay,
no,
okay,
very leisurely,
okay,
just for fun. But it's been really nice. It's like even when it's like
okay.
cold and snowy, I like put my beanie on and put my gloves on
Wow.
and just go for a bike, which is just a really nice way to clear your head. Or it's just
Hmm.
yeah. So I think that's my favorite part. And then obviously having all these people here, which is an
Hmm.
extension of, it's like having, which is really nice, right? Like my India life was living with family. So now friends
Yeah.
like family comes a little bit into
Yeah.
uh you feel it here more than I've ever felt before. So it's really nice to have everyone around.
Is
Yeah.
is Chicago and US going to be home for the foreseeable future?
If I'm in the US, I see myself in Chicago. I
Hmm.
don't feel like I want to move cities. I like the city too much. But it's always a question I'm wrestling with. Like if you ask me today, I think I want to move back to India.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to move back in the next couple of years.
Hmm.
Um, but I think my timeline of moving back when I graduated from business school would have been like,
Hmm.
yeah, in like 2, 3 years, I would have moved back. And I'm at 3 years
Hmm.
now. And now I'm saying a couple of years. So
Yeah.
it is, it's a very hard decision, honestly. It's one of the biggest ones that's like always playing at the back of my head because at this point, like 80% of my friends are in the US.
Yeah.
Like 80% from business school, bunch of people from undergrad, and obviously Bain.
Yeah.
Critical mass of people are here. So if I go back to India, like a lot of my close friends are still there, but critical mass is now in the US.
Yeah.
Um, but my biggest like motivation for moving back is parents. So like my sister is here, which is really good,
Hmm.
but my parents are in India, and I feel
Yeah.
like one of us should be in India. So
Hmm.
I don't know. It's always like a question I'm wrestling with, like when to go
Do
back,
you and your
if to go
sister
back. Huh?
do you and your sister discuss this?
Um, a little bit. I mean, I talked to her about it, but like she's grown up here. She's been here since she was 18. So she spent like
Yeah.
50% of her life here. So I don't think it was ever on the cards that she would ever consider moving back. So I'm like
Yeah.
talking through my
Hmm.
decision and thought process with her. But um, I mean, thankfully, my parents are like they're very like, you do what you need to do. Like they're never
Yeah.
sort of trying to say, ask either of us to do anything. But I just feel like,
Yeah.
US is too far away from India, and you know, yeah.
Yeah.
What about
That's
you?
been a
Is Singapore home
uh
for the foreseeable future?
I yeah, I don't know. I would say for the next immediate short term, like a year
Yeah,
or two,
yeah,
um, yes.
mm,
But beyond that, I don't know.
yeah,
I guess it comes back to the question of what it is I want to do, and
mm,
the way I don't know if I'm kicking the can down the road or it's actually true. Wherein there's actually no place in the world which is like calling me. Like there's no place that I'm like, hey, I really want to go and spend time there.
yeah,
I think when I was in India, it was always like part of me wanted to go live abroad and see
yeah,
what that life was, right?
yeah,
And Singapore sort of have given me that,
mm,
and I'm very grateful. But I would like to live in another place. Like I think
yeah,
Singapore is one version of the world, and I would argue it's a beautiful version, but a
yeah,
fairly bubbleized version of the world.
yeah.
So I would like to see maybe live in another place, but there's nothing like there's no strong like oh my god
Calling.
like I would probably go and like visit like like travel and visit maybe stay for an extended period maybe a month 2 months,
Yeah,
but yeah there's no place in the world which I'm just like oh what place is calling me.
yeah,
And going back to like India, yeah I don't know like I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening and
yeah,
I feel like massive FOMO,
mm-hmm.
especially like with the whole startup like
Yeah,
ecosystem, right? I'm just like
yeah,
wow like look at this is crazy.
yeah,
But like logistically, yeah I don't know if that's a viable option.
yeah. Fair.
So I don't have an answer. So for now, for the next, I think
Mm,
next a year and a half, like the lease is sort of forcing function. So our lease is up for another year,
yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
we will just kick the can
You
down. We're like,
decide.
oh, when the lease maybe like 6 more
Yeah,
months out, then we'll think about what
yeah.
we want to do.
I
But
feel like
yeah,
sometimes I want like a Europe chapter to my life, like just a chapter.
hmm,
It could be six
yeah,
months, it could be 1 year, but
yeah.
I think it will give me a lot of interesting perspective of like how to live and the right way to live. Moving to Europe,
You know what?
it's
I was in Paris, I
yeah,
think a year ago for my sister's graduation stuff. And one thing which um, I mean, of course, this is most of the stuff I say is highly exaggerated, but the theme is maybe true.
yeah.
Is people in France at least they know how to live fucking life. They know how to
Hmm.
enjoy life.
I agree.
Like a lot of us, I sometimes I feel like not a lot of us, me. Like you're on holiday, you have resources to enjoy the holiday, you have the luxury of being in an amazing place. But yet, like I look at these people and they're sitting sipping their fucking coffee and wine, have no care in the
I
world. And
seriously
I'm like, wow, like you can't buy that shit. Like it's just
no.
how they think or just how culture is.
Yeah,
Wherein they will just sit and just enjoy fucking an afternoon. And again, I don't know if they're really enjoying it. Maybe
yeah,
there's stresses at the back of their mind, la la la.
yeah.
But I mean, like they know how to fucking enjoy life, and I'm like, fuck, I want to learn how to enjoy life.
I know. Oh,
So
I
I think
know.
that is it's a very Europe. a
Yeah,
Europe thing.
like just go live in Spain for, 6 months and just do the whole the lunches go on for forever, like take a siesta, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
just like learn to pause. And yeah, I don't know.
But
I
then I
feel
think
like,
that the alternate side of me is like, yeah, yeah, look at them. They're all in debt. They have no money to pay for their own economies. That's not like, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to be, what does that result into? So I don't know. I don't know the right answer, but I
yeah,
guess like it's a good perspective,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Um, okay. So Chicago probably home for the next year, two, as long
yeah,
as you're in the US.
yeah,
But if not, the plan is for you to head back
I think so.
uh,
Yeah,
at some point. Interesting.
yeah,
Okay, let us talk about business school.
mm.
What was the highlight? I know your business school experience probably was a bit interesting given COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
But what was sort of the biggest takeaway for you from business school? And having been through that experience,
Mm.
when you look back, I ask this to most people who've done business school. What do you think now are good reasons to do business school, and maybe bad reasons to do business school?
Hmm. Um, what was my biggest takeaway? Um, I don't know, yeah. Like I think like there were trying to think. Feels like forever ago now. And there's so many different chapters of in-person business school and COVID, and then it was a different business school experience. Let me start with that.
Hmm.
If I have this urge in me to do another master's just
Hmm.
because I feel like I didn't do the full experience in the way I was supposed to. Um,
But what do you think like you missed out, or what is the biggest thing you feel you missed out doing the
I
COVID
mean, I think
business school?
like one, just purely like, I wanted to do business school because I wanted to do education outside India
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do education and be a part of classrooms and like, um, really get the end-to-end experience, classrooms, projects, like groups with people from different experiences, personal, professional, everything. Like, but I think we had that for 8 months, and then March everything shut down, and Wharton went fully virtual for the next, I think, 8 months. And the last 6 months, when I came back to Philly, because I went back to India in between, um, it was hybrid technically, but still most classes were remote. And hybrid class
Hmm.
sizes were very restricted. So when I came back, I got some of the social life of business school, but not so much the academic or like classroom life.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I think purely from a learning and education and classroom experience, I think I'm craving more
Hmm.
than what I got. Um, yeah, but I think like it was. I mean, it was a lot of time to just pause and reflect and like meet people from so many different backgrounds who've had so many different like paths to get to the same place that you're at.
Hmm.
Um, and it made me appreciate and just like think about. I felt very grateful and privileged to like reach there, right? I thought a lot about the idea of this compounding privilege, right? You have to be born in a family that had the resources to put you into a good enough school that
Hmm.
turned you into a educated, decently well-rounded enough person that led you into a good enough like undergrad, and then where a really good company came to recruit, and you got into that company, and then that was sort of the life and the standard path that so many people were taking. And I just thought, when I came to business school, like I was like, the number of like, am I the most deserving person who like should have been here? Probably not, but there's
Hmm.
so much of privilege that has got me here that it just brought a lot of, I don't know, like I felt very grateful and and lucky to be able
Want
to
people
experience.
around you just like that, like gone to good schools, worked at good jobs, and they landed up in business school.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different backgrounds also. Like, it's not like everyone looked, um, had the exact same journey, but
Mm.
everyone who was there was like privileged enough to be there in some ways, obviously, for sure.
Hmm.
But like, it just made me think about, like, yeah, it was such a big change to be there. Then you feel like, well, so many other people like could have also been here. Like, there's so
Mm.
much of so much of this is like not me versus the
Mm.
circumstances I was born in or whatever that has like allowed this to happen.
Mm.
um so that was interesting. It was also interesting to obviously like go through the personal growth journey of, working through that imposter syndrome and like
Mm.
thinking through like vulnerability. And I was out of once I left Bain and I came to business school, like I wasn't in business school to necessarily recruit, right? Because I knew I was coming back to Bain
Correct.
Chicago. So while a lot of people were putting a lot of energy into networking and the
Yeah.
new job and the career pivot and whatever, like I was just there to kind of take a break, meet people, get to know people. And yes, I had this culture behavior change thing that I was pursuing, and I ended up doing my internship in that space. But that profession and career was not the center stage of like my business school
Mm-hmm.
experience. As a result of which, like I was like classic myself of like wearing my heart on my sleeve and oversharing and being like the person who, like I said, right? Like I like to go deep instead of broad in conversation.
Yeah.
So a lot of business school experience was that. And then, you kind of like start to think about whether like that's become more and more my brand since business school and beyond.
Mm.
Um, and you sort of see people around you in a business school experience and you're like, man, I wish people like talked a little bit more about their failures, right? Like
Mm.
everyone's networking, everyone's sort of putting forward their strongest self. um and I think it made the experience, like parts of the experience, more overwhelming than it needed to be, which I think, like, to anyone going to business school, I feel like they should just know that it is overwhelming for everybody. It's just that everyone's not talking about it. And I just wish like
Mm.
people did that a little bit more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because I would be the first person to be like, yeah, I applied for this thing and it didn't work out. Like it's
Mm.
fine. Like, I wouldn't hold that back, but I don't think that's something that
What
everyone
people
was
talk about.
doing. So yeah, it made me think about that a little bit. Yeah.
What do you think is not a good reason to do business school now that you've been through it and you were in this, I think, this phase where everybody was applying.
Hmm.
Um, are there like some reasons you think or you see that, oh, people think that this is what business school is going to be, but that's probably not a wise decision now that I've gone through the experience.
Uh, I I feel like it was a really good experience overall.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not saying that a lot of the experiences I got, whether it was like meeting people from so many different places or you know, sort of getting exposed to different cultures, experiences, all of that. Like it's not like you need to go to business school to get that. Like I'm sure you
Hmm.
moving from India to Singapore, living a year in Jakarta, like meeting people from so many places, like also exposed you to a lot of those different things.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think it's the only way to get those experiences.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know if like I thought as much before business school, like what I want to get out of it,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's an interesting one to think about. Like, if I knew how much between balancing social life and academic life and career, like those
Hmm.
three balls that were always up in the air at business school,
Hmm.
like, and I was trying to maximize a bunch of things, maybe not the career part as much, but I was trying to like give
Hmm.
my everything to a lot of it. But I
Hmm.
think like going into it, if I would have liked to now, have a little bit more of an answer, like what am I looking to get out of this?
Hmm.
Um, what are the places, people, experiences I want to be spending energy on
Hmm.
versus just saying no to? Because I think
Hmm.
business school, like the culture used to be like, let's fill up the calendar. You'll have like
Hmm.
coffee chat with one person, walk in the park with the other person,
Oh,
like,
really?
small group dinner and this like professor fireside thing. And you're trying to go to everything. And then you just
Sounds like an
like,
extrovert is paradise.
well, no, but business school is the place where I realized, Sanya, you're not as extroverted as you thought you were. Like, I think
Really?
that's when I started appreciating the quiet, which has extended into
Hmm.
Chicago. And I'm like, okay, it's
Hmm.
like
That is a
sometimes I
bit
just,
too much. Like,
it's too
I
much.
consider myself extroverted, but
Yeah,
like there are days wherein I'm like, I need my morning by myself. Like I'm gonna
yeah,
get up and I don't want to talk to anybody for like the first 3 hours of the day.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
after that, if I cannot speak to anybody, like there are days I work from home, I get depressed, I think halfway through. I'm
yeah.
just like, the fuck? Like I need to like meet people. And I kid you not, I get out of the house, I get into the subway, the train, and I'm
Yeah.
already feeling better. I'm like, oh my god, so many people. So it's so weird. But yeah, like yeah. Sometimes I like wonder if I should just take a 2 year break and do business school, um, just for the fun, like just to
Just
do
for the
all these
fun.
extroverted things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 200,000 price tag is like Reuben. I think you maybe think a little bit about more on how you want to spend $200,000. I'm
Ruben,
sure there are other things.
you first buy the $2 organizer, okay? Then you-
Oh my god! Don't even start. It's on my list of things to do every weekend for the last 6 months. Oh, fuck that organism.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it's
God.
crazy. Um, you mentioned you were thinking a lot about your brand, and you also shared that in your voice note. I'm curious to know what parts of the Sanya brand, or what is the Sanya brand today? And I ask you that only because that's a question sometimes I ask myself,
Yeah.
and I see people, blowing trumpets on LinkedIn. And I was talking to I think Lewis about this. A part of the reason I find, or a part of the reason I find a lot of stuff on LinkedIn
Yeah.
cringy, is because deep down I am jealous.
Hmm.
So I'm curious to know on this whole brand thing. What is the
Yeah.
Sanya brand?
Wait,
What
I
parts
didn't
of
catch
it?
that. The reason you find what on LinkedIn is why you're
A lot
jealous?
of
What
people
is it?
talking about, like a lot of people have their brands quite defined on LinkedIn.
Mm. Mm.
And you know that this person does this and this is what they've done, and they do a really good job at marketing self. Like that's the
Correct.
positive way to put it,
Yeah.
which you have to. If you don't market yourself, nobody else is going to do that for you.
Yeah.
But I find LinkedIn cringy as fuck.
Yeah. Oh,
Like people
same.
put
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
stuff, I'm
Same.
just like, I want to puke.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the harsh reality, at least is what we concluded, was we find it cringy because deep down we are envious of it, that we would like to be doing that and we cannot do
Yeah.
it, or we are not doing it. Therefore we just we qualify
Cringy
that
when
as
other.
cringy and be
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really
Possible.
shit.
It's
So
interesting.
anyway, but I'm curious to know, what is the Sanya
Yeah.
brand? How are you thinking about it? And
Yeah.
what parts
I
of it
guess
are
like,
you
sorry, go
comfortable
ahead, go
with, and
ahead.
what parts of you,
Yeah.
I know it's a long question, but what parts you said you're not very at peace with? But
Hmm.
like, talk to me about that.
Well, yeah, I guess like let me maybe ask you first, which is
Hmm.
like, what did what would you think was my brand in Bain India?
Uh, okay, I'll tell you.
You can say like good and bad, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to tell you three things which I would see very positively, and three things I
Okay.
would say maybe not that. I won't say
Okay.
not positive, but
Yeah.
something which I wouldn't want to do.
Hmm.
Very smart.
Hmm.
Very um, like good, like positive energy to be around,
Hmm.
and like, what is the word? But like dependable. Like if
Hmm.
you said you'd do something, or if you're around and you're like we do something, you'll be like, okay, I'll do this and I'll get it done.
Hmm.
Like that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Maybe things which I would not personally want. People
Hmm.
pleaser.
Hmm.
So one for sure. Um, and then the second one is like I said, right? I find it very. I don't know what the term is, but I find it very
Yeah.
hard to believe that you never had a plan coming into Bain. I don't think that. Like I would not believe that. So that was the brand. Like it
What do
would
you mean by brand?
seem like
Yeah.
Sanya is like, oh, going with the flow and all that, but no. Like Sanya is very very clear on what the fuck she wants,
Oh
and
wow.
she's smart and determined
Yeah.
enough to fucking get it. So
Interesting.
maybe it was like, oh, why does she put this facade that, oh, I am so, happy the lucky. No, like you're fucking smart and you kill it, like own it, right? So yeah, that's what I would say was the Sanya brand.
Yeah.
The stuff which maybe I would aspire to, and maybe stuff which I would not.
Yeah.
But again, caveat being, this is when I knew you back in
Yeah.
a decade ago, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
same Sanya as today.
Yeah. 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 No, I
I'm
mean,
actually curious to know what you thought the Reuben brand was. So we'll come back to that
we'll come back
after.
to that.
Yes.
It's also very interesting. I really must address. Okay, you should. I'll be so curious if people like Pranjal, Ducky, and Chuck agree with this part of like uh that if any of them think I'm a planned person and if I know what I'm doing or if I have clarity
Really?
on what I'm doing. Like I think most of the people who know me would know I'm
Maybe I
just
can put
kind
this
of
up on
going with it.
Instagram and I can make a poll out of it. And let's see what. But I mean, not many people
But
know you
no,
from
yeah.
Instagram. Anyway.
But no, I mean the reason I asked you that was because I think if I reflect on like my own brand, um, from high school to undergrad to Bain India, and I think about my brand over the last 5 years,
Mm,
I think I have different adjectives that come to my mind. And
okay.
this is both a function of like my own image of myself, like my self image, and also like say things I've heard people appreciate or mention, right, about me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's also clearly things that are being noticed or whatever. I think when I was in India, school or undergrad or Bain, like there was more of me that was like I think the driven piece or the achiever
Mm,
piece or like someone who goes and takes initiative, takes the lead. Like I did that and sort of that was a part of I think my brand for the India part of my life.
mm,
It a lot of the other things also were there, like either the bubbly, positive, whatever person,
mm,
and like all of that. But there was very much a part of my brand that had more to do with my work or potential or all of that, right? Um,
yeah.
I think over the last 5 years, I don't know if it's a function of like in business school, again, like career was not the focus for me. And then my Bain US journey has been more of like we were talking about earlier, trying to prioritize other parts of life.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the other thing that's happened in the last 5 years is I've met a lot more sum total like new people than
Mm,
like people in India. Because India, my circle, undergrad, Bain, it was, yes, I met new people in Bain, India, but the number of new people I met over the last 5 years through business school and moving to Chicago has been a lot more. So there have been a lot of
mm,
new data points of people who've like formed impressions, or I think in my version, like how they view me, right? And
mm,
last 5 years, I've heard much more of like the words I think that come to people's mind, I think, when they think of me would be more around, oh, she's very warm, or she's very friendly and approachable and very positive and very vulnerable, and her EQ is great, right? Like, something about your um chai has become synonymous with me because I'm basically like making chai for everyone all the time. Like that's what I do since business school to now. So I feel like the things that I think people notice more about me are a lot of these like like soft skills in some ways.
Mm,
That in my mind I just uh condense all down to, oh, I'm like a nice enough person, right? Like, and
mm,
people generally enjoy my company, like whatever, right?
mm,
But I think the part of me that maybe had a brand that was more about my work or potential or
mm,
performance, or whether you say smartness or hardworking, driven, whatever, I don't think
mm,
that's been as big a part of my brand over the last few years, at least in my mind.
mm, mm,
I could be off. Like people could say, no, we perceive you as blah, blah, blah. But
mm,
I
mm,
don't think that's been there. And I think I'm not at peace with that. So fully at peace with it. Like, yes. And I think there are two things to think about. Like, one, I am taking all the other positive stuff and like sort of not attaching value to it as much and being
mm.
like, okay, that's just who I am. Like, fine. But
Yeah.
then there's so I need to like maybe think about how I value that part. But then there's a part of me that's like, if I'm not at peace, then what do I need to do to move towards that different brand or like a version of that brand that used to exist?
Mm.
um so I don't know. It's that's the long and short of it, I think, if that makes sense.
So the fact that people do not maybe perceive you based on what you get is people don't perceive you as, say, driven or focused on career and smart. That is something you don't like, or
Oh,
you're
it's
not at
just
peace with that.
it's like, in addition to being known for your soft skills in some ways of like for
Yeah.
who you are as a person, you want to be have a brand that is that goes beyond that as well, I think. And I think for a long part of my life there was that.
Mm.
So it probably like links back to, am I comfortable with this version, like ambition
Mm-hmm.
and my relationship with work and all of that. um but it's not even just
Mm.
work, I think. Career, it's more just, it doesn't have to be like what are you doing at your job or your trajectory. It's
Yeah.
not that. It's just like, oh, like when I want someone, like what are the first five words you would want someone to use when they describe you? That's the
Mm.
question. And I'm okay for like three of those words to be about how nice I am as a person, whether I'm emotionally like intelligent person, or if I'm kind or warm or friendly, whatever, positive. But
Mm.
I'd want one or two of them to be other parts of my like life. Um, and I think
Mm.
those parts have maybe been a little bit of a backseat, is in my opinion. So
Maybe a question on that. It's a very interesting thought. Um, do you expect all the people you know to use the exact same five words, or do you expect that different people from life, or would you want different people from life to use different words when they describe you,
mm,
or would you want all of them to say the exact five words that you want?
uh, I think um version, like I think want that balance in from most people.
Hmm.
Like, yes, if I'm talking about my like family or partner or close friends or whatever, then maybe more would be like about me as a person. But I think even from, I don't know, I guess it's an interesting question. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Maybe the balance would be different, but there is a version of me that doesn't just want to be known for like the soft part, soft
Hmm.
and mushy part, which I think
Hmm.
has been more my brand in the last
Yeah.
few years.
The reason I ask that is sometimes when I think of, and this is less about me, more of when I think of my relationship with other people.
Yeah.
One thing I've realized is a lot of disappointment comes from wrong or like misplaced expectations from people.
Hmm.
And therefore, I'm like, hey, really think about what this person means for you in your life, right?
Yeah.
Um, and similarly, vice versa, what you like, what role you are playing in other people's life. And I
Yeah.
think what I would make a lot of mistakes is I would put a lot of expectations on one single person,
Yeah.
whether it was a partner, whether it was a close friend. Like you expect them to be you know a companion when you're sad. You expect them to be fun to hang out with. You expect them to
Yeah.
be an intellectual sparring partner. You expect them to be just listen when you're feeling down or whatever, right? And I'm just like, what the fuck, Ruben? Like, you expect this person to be everything. It's impossible. Like, it's
Yeah.
impossible for them to do everything, right? So
Yeah.
what is the one thing you need this person to be? And like sometimes I
Hmm.
jokingly say that, oh, sometimes, oh, whatever. I'm not going to put this in those many crude ways because it
Yeah.
sounds a bit bad, but like sometimes when I think about, oh, are these friends like the best friends I could have? Like,
Yeah.
this whole terminology of you're the average of the five people who surround you, la la la. Sometimes like, oh, maybe, maybe I should hang out with different kind of people, right?
Yeah.
But then I'm like, hey, Ruben, like some people, like if you meet with an accident, like who are you going to pick up the phone and know that they're going to fucking come to help you, right? And that is the piece they sometimes give you, and you can't take that for granted at all.
Hmm.
So anyway, the point is that I feel like even myself as a brand, when I think of it, I don't. While
Hmm.
I would like everybody to say the same thing, I would like different people to say different things about, like Ruben. Um, and I wouldn't want, like, I don't really care if my closest friends think I'm smart.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
care if
Yeah.
they think I'm dependable and they
Yeah.
feel that they can call me however bad things are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or like, yeah, I don't know, but I've never thought about it. But since
Yeah.
as you were talking, I was like, um, yeah,
That's very interesting. No, and that's super interesting. And I think it'll be something I'll probably think about after this call because it's almost like, if you have to have like an ambition statement for yourself, like, oh,
yeah,
like Sanya as a daughter or as a sister or as a friend, or as a
yeah.
partner, as like in the professional space, like what is your one line thing that you
Yeah.
want to be known for? I think maybe my reflections on brand and what I was talking about have probably been much more for the work and work adjacent space. So, like business school, while was not about career for me, like most people were there with
Hmm.
a career oriented mindset. So, even the people I
Yeah.
met there in a non professional capacity, like
Yeah.
somewhere you are kind of feeling like you are being judged at a professional
Yeah.
or level. And same with sort of Bain US. And but yeah, maybe a little bit like also extends into some amount of personal life outside of these things. So I
Hmm.
need to think about like, yeah.
What was Ruben's brand in Sania's eyes
Reuben's
at
brand. Oh
at
my
the
God.
BCC? Two things you liked, two things you hated.
I didn't hate much, I think.
Okay, hate's a bad
I
word, but
dislike.
you dislike or you like
That's
the
not
least.
the people pleaser in me, okay? Before you before you drill it down to that. Oh, you were just like you were what I liked, like you had so much energy. Like you were just
Hmm.
like I think the DJ Reuben was, the person who was like yeah, I just felt like you were also a very positive and energetic person. And I think I used to love just how you used to go into your own zone in a
Hmm.
in a room full of like people who are dancing and chilling and whatever, and you're just playing your music and you're like completely zoned in. And I'm like, okay, this guy is just like very comfortable with very that. Like
Hmm.
this is really nice. So that was pretty cool. I always thought you were very, very smart and ambitious. Like like I knew or not, I don't know if I knew this, but I was not surprised when you were trying out like Nivasa and Dot and
Mm.
like all of that, because I think I saw a lot of that fire and passion and energy inside you to just like go out there and do things. Like,
Mm.
I don't think you would not be the, like, you were someone who I think I associate with, like, this guy's gonna take risks. Like, he's gonna go
Mm.
after what, he's not chasing stable from a,
Mm.
like, work this thing. He's gonna just go out there and try it out. Like, your appetite
Mm.
for that, I think, was very high. Which was pretty cool, I thought.
Mm.
Um, was I not like, I don't know. I'm trying to think really hard. I think.
The answer is already at the tip of your tongue. You just
It,
have to say it.
no, it is not. I think the thing I used to think about was like, I used to think, what would I, and this is maybe the people's leader in me. I was like, what does Reuben think of me? Like, I'm so confused.
Mm. Mm.
Because we used to hang out enough, but then didn't have enough of a one-on-one. And
Yeah.
then obviously you're really good friends with Chuck, and then you are now
Yeah.
really good friends with Ducky and Pranjal. And
Yeah.
obviously in Singapore, and I'm very close to all three of them. And
Yeah.
so I used to be like, I wonder like what Reuben thinks. Like, it's just, but that's just me, like, but I can't think of like what I didn't like, honestly. But I'll text you later if something comes to me, but I
No.
genuinely can't think of anything else. uh
Okay.
yeah.
On a previous podcast, somebody told me that I was impatient, and it was so obvious
Nishtha,
on my
I
face.
heard that, right?
Initially, yes,
That
she was like,
podcast.
"If you didn't like something, it is so clear on your face." And I'm like, "That is true."
But you worked with
Um,
her, so like she probably saw some of that. I don't
yeah.
remember impatience as a virtue or like a
I mean,
trait.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
You agree that you're
Um,
impatient?
yeah, I agree.
Huh.
At that point, I was very impatient. I would say
Yeah.
I'm still fairly impatient, but I would say a little bit lesser because
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah,
Well, I told you like 2 years ago, and then even 2 years before that, and you might remember that
yes,
you have become. I mean, I was talking about BCC Reuben being energetic, ball of energy, like
yeah,
all of that, and feel like you've just become like a much calmer and
yeah.
ex,
I remember that vividly.
version
I
of
tell a lot of
yourself.
people that. I'm like,
It,
you know what? I met somebody after a long time and they said, I've become calm. And there's a
yeah,
nice, apparently, aura around me. And I'm like, that's exactly what I
yeah,
want to aspire.
yeah. And it was really nice to see. So that was cool.
Mm. Okay. Um, let's talk about, I usually like to talk to people about money because that's
Mm.
another big question I have in my mind. Um, what's maybe a really good investment you've made in the last 6 months? And not
Actually,
like investment, but like
huh.
money really well spent. Like you've spent some
Oh,
money on something and you're like, my God, it was a fair amount of money. Maybe not fair amount, maybe small, big. But like that was money really well spent. Does
oh.
something come to mind?
Taylor Swift. I
Taylor
went to watch
Swift.
Taylor Swift a month ago in
Oh
Germany.
wow. Oh, you
Um,
went all the way to Germany to watch her?
yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
Totally worth it. Totally worth planning like an entire Europe trip around watching her. Um, yeah, that was amazing.
Do you do a lot of concerts in the US?
Yeah, yeah. Live music is one of the, yeah, it brings me a lot of joy as a person. So I've done a lot of those in the US, and yeah.
And is Chicago like? Is it more like going for like these big concerts, or is it like there are just lots of like these live music scenes in the city? Like, does Chicago
No,
have a lot of big music scene?
big, yes. Like, I think Chicago, like New York, SF would definitely be a stop for any big artist.
Hmm.
But then there are like smaller gigs and everything that are also really
Hmm.
nice to watch. You've so far in Singapore?
So far?
Yeah, have you heard of like this thing called Songs from a Room? It's called So Far. Um,
Oh,
it
maybe I might have seen this on YouTube, but no, it doesn't
yeah,
doesn't sort of pop
I
out.
think it should be there in Singapore. It's like in 400 cities in the world, including Chicago
Okay,
and like Philly and
what is it?
Seattle. It's basically like intimate live music gigs. So like a little space. It could be someone's house, rooftop, a bakery, or whatever space. And they
Hmm.
release the venue 48 hours before the gig. And you don't
Oh,
even know what artists are performing really. You just know you're booking a sofa show in this neighborhood, and then you show
I
up, and
see.
it's like there's going to be like three acts. Sometimes there's like spoken poetry and all of that. So
Hmm.
it's super nice. It's a very good date idea. You should see if it's there
Oh,
in Singapore.
yeah. And this
Yeah.
happens like every week, every month.
I mean, I think it depends on the city. Like, I think in Chicago, there's
Got
probably
it.
something happening every week,
Hmm.
in different neighborhoods. But yeah. Uh,
Oh.
So yeah, big and small gigs. One of my favorite ones of the last few years has been there's a venue called Red Rocks in Colorado. Have you heard of that?
Hmm. I've heard this name,
Yeah, it's
but
it's just like it's these massive red rocks. Like people go there for
hmm.
hikes and stuff, but it's also a concert venue, so maybe like 5,000 odd people.
Oh.
But it's one of those, like in the middle of nature and like this whatever, and then they just listen to music. So it's fun.
But wait, Colorado and Chicago are not close by.
No, no. I like
Okay.
fly to places
Ah, okay.
when,
The US is so bloody
when, like
big,
in the
and like
sense,
I have no
music is a
clue.
big thing that makes me kind of go to different places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That for example in Singapore is there's almost I won't say there's zero music scene, but there's not that much of a scene in Singapore, which is a bit
Yeah, but
sad.
big concerts though, lots of them, no?
Post COVID, like Singapore has started doing these big concerts,
Yeah,
and it's actually I think doing like working out really well for them. Like I think they're trying to make Singapore as this concert capital of Southeast Asia.
yeah,
So Taylor Swift, for example, had 6 shows in Singapore,
yeah, I remember. Yeah, I like you
and
telling me. Yeah.
apparently, whatever the government here is very smart. They negotiated that she would only play in Singapore in Southeast Asia. She would not
Yes.
play anywhere else.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was
yeah.
like there was a joke about how Singapore's GDP was took an uptick because of Taylor Swift. La la
Oh
la.
God. Yeah.
But yeah, I went to watch Ed Sheeran recently. What a crazy show!
Nice.
Like what an
Yeah.
act! Amazing!
Yeah.
Like I
He's
so recommend people to
amazing.
watch him live. Like
Yeah.
the guy is just a one man show. Like I don't think most people know that he can play all his songs just by himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's true.
is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Imagine Dragons, I think, are coming later this year. Bruno
Mm.
Mars came in.
Nice.
A lot of luck out of like K-pop.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Singapore's becoming like this, but it's very like big concert. Like
Yeah.
you come, go to a stadium, and like not like I would say like smaller gigs and all is not that much, or maybe I'm not in
Yeah.
tune to it, but in general, yeah, Singapore I wouldn't say is as
Mm.
which I feel miss. Like I think that's maybe one of the big reasons why I don't know if I would want to be Singapore very very long term. Like I would like to be in
Yeah.
a city where all of these things happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think Singapore it's okay. I think it's getting better, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You get to do DJ stuff, DJing in Singapore.
not that much.
Mm.
Unfortunately, not that much.
Mm.
But I've also not like tried that hard. Like I've not like put myself out there and like
Yeah.
gone to like clubs and also
Yeah.
like I feel like like we don't like I don't party that much anymore. I don't do like
Yeah.
the Belvedere kind of house parties, which I feel like was so important for me to like I would get to practice every weekend.
Yeah.
Like now, for example, I have my console out there, which
Huh.
is a
Yeah.
reminder that Reuben, please practice.
Do it.
But I remember in Belvedere, I never had to like consciously practice because I knew like, oh, there's going
Something.
to be a party Saturday night, and I would just play and I would try new things, and
Yeah.
then I would like Sunday, I would like I really remember we would play all night on Saturday. Sunday morning, I would go through my history to see what songs I played
Love
and
it.
think about which songs worked and all that. That was like informally a memory. And then
Oh,
next weekend you would try it again, and
yeah.
like, we would party almost every weekend, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, because of that doesn't happen anymore. Like I've also like lost touch a little bit, but I play once in a
Mm.
while here and there. Somebody has a Diwali party and they want to do
Yeah.
something, and so yeah, but not
Love
not as
it.
much as I would like to.
Hmm.
Okay, last thing I want to talk to you about is you recently told me you went for a wellness retreat. in
Hmm.
Pune.
Yes.
What was going through your mind for you to decide to do that? And then I think I also want to talk about what were your big takeaways from that experience.
Yeah, I mean, so I think like I think I mentioned I took a 3 month sabbatical this year.
Hmm.
So Jan through March, I took a sabbatical. Um, and I think health was a big thing on my mind, or has been a big thing on my mind for the last like couple of years.
Hmm.
Just I think again from moving out of your house and I was living with family, it felt like a lot of my health stuff used to be like parents being like, okay, let's like you need to go for a checkup for this, or like you should get this looked at, etc., etc. And like it was less me owning my own health.
Yeah.
And over the last 3 years living alone, I think I've just that's become much more of something I am owning and driving. And I think like there's been a lot of data related to health that I'm like looking at more. I have like a sensor that tracks my glucose levels and diabetes and things like that. And there's like
Hmm.
other stuff. So in general, like I was like, okay, I want the focus of this sabbatical to just be like physical and mental health, and
Hmm.
to improve on that. So I categorically didn't want to travel too much. Like a lot of people, when they take time off, are like, okay, go travel to a bunch of places. I was like, that happens in the course of a normal year. Like, I
Hmm.
just want to unwind and whatever. So I think that was the idea. And I was going to spend almost 6 weeks of my sabbatical in India. So I thought, like, I want to, because once you go back living at home, you're in Delhi, you're staying with family, you have friends, it's very easy to like slip back into just usual Delhi
Yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
I was like, I want to just take out some focus period of time where I'm not doing anything else and I'm just like by myself. Um, and I think a retreat had just been on my mind, like, you know, take a retreat, get some yoga meditation in. I'm not someone who meditates much at all, but I want to get into it or like use it as a tool to feel like less stressed and overwhelmed and more centered and everything. So I was like, let's do it in a retreat. And
Hmm.
there's this one in Pune called Atvantan,
Hmm.
which I'd heard pretty good things about. So yeah, I did that for 7 days. Just went kind of alone. Um, it was a really good experience. I mean, this was not
Like,
one
what
of
what happens
those.
in these retreats?
So a lot of the ones in India are, I would say, a little bit more focused on physical health. Like there
Hmm.
is yoga and meditation, like that happens in every retreat, but
Hmm.
it's more on like physical health than big things for mental health, I would say.
Hmm.
But so in this particular one, it was actually quite like you literally had an Ayurvedic consult on the day you got there to talk about all the things in your body that you want to reset or that you have an issue with. And then they create like a schedule for you and a nutrition plan for you, um, based on the issues you're dealing with. So then every
Hmm.
day ends up being like going for this Ayurvedic massage and like then going for a physio thing and then going for like this particular kind of yoga situation. And like every day, technically, I would not wake up at like 7 a.m., but I would wake up normally at 9 a.m. But I'd end the day with yoga and meditation. And then through the day, it was these Ayurvedic massages, physio sessions, just like sitting in nature, having really clean food,
Hmm.
leaving your phone in the room because it wouldn't work in like a bunch of different places. So just unplugging and you know the biggest physical health thing that happened for me in that time, which blew me away, was like I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 13, and which means I like take insulin every time I'm eating food. um during the 7 days that I was there, like if I would take 20 units of insulin a day, it came down to like less than five. So, and there are two different, whatever, not going to details. There are two different types of insulin I take. One of them I didn't need to take at all. Like, and that was something like historic. And I wasn't doing anything except I was doing maybe 10,000 steps by the amount of like walking around that would happen in the
Hmm.
resort. But there was no other like crazy exercise I was doing. I was having 3 meals a day that were just so clean and healthy that that kind of became a bit of an aha moment that like I've been managing the whatever diabetes everything like fine so far, but it can be so much better.
Hmm.
Um so yeah,
And how long were you doing this for you to like? I'm sure it didn't happen in like a day, right? Like how
it
long were
happened
you?
in like by day 3. um Also, sorry, it's fireworks happening. So
Oh wow.
I don't know if you can see them. Full on. Yeah, you can
Oh
see them.
yes. Oh wow. Why are the fireworks?
There are fireworks twice a week in Chicago, like from June to September, just for fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah. So anyway,
We can take a
um,
second to watch it if you want.
no, no, that's fine. It's fun. Um, but yeah, I think by day 3 it was happening. In the sense I could see, like, I can feel when my sugar is dropping low. So I was
Yeah.
like tracking my sugar and glucose levels and feeling like it's dipping too much. And then I went back to the Ayurvedic like person I was consulting, and she's like, "Yeah, you need to be reducing your insulin drastically because the food is much like
Hmm.
lower on carbs and
Wow.
like it's cleaner." So um yeah, that was pretty cool. Um so
Are there
physical
any
health wise, I
changes?
had a bunch of good insights from
Hmm.
that wellness retreat. Mental health wise, I think it was just nice to be able to get into that routine, like meditate with people and all of that. I wouldn't say I've carried it on that much after that. Like sometimes I will
Hmm.
open headspace if I am like feeling overwhelmed, but it's once in 2 weeks, so like it's not something I
Hmm.
do all the time at all.
Okay.
So, but highly recommended. Like
Interesting.
I think I want to do this
Yeah.
once every year, not the same place, but try a new wellness retreat every time and just take out that time to like 5 6 days focus on myself and my health and do a reset.
Got it. And this one is not like that Vipassana stuff when you can't talk to anybody and oh,
No, but
that fucking freaks me out. I know few people have done it, but
yeah,
I'm like, oh my god, that seems very scary.
I've been thinking about trying it out. I might just sometime.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe a 3 day Vipassana. 10 days is too much. Like there's
Yeah,
some shorter ones or something, but
I
I
think
don't know.
so.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's like a Vipassana for starters. Like ease into it.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. As we wrap up, Sanya, when you look back over the last decade, I'm curious to know if you've had any shifts in belief. So something you would believe very strongly when, say, you were, just entering the BCC, or maybe just, leaving college, and you've taken maybe a 180-degree shift on that belief.
Hmm. Interesting. These big questions you ask, Reuben. It's like biggest takeaway and shift in belief. Can I ask you what's yours?
You can ask me,
Okay.
but after you answer,
I'm thinking.
you can take your time.
Yeah.
I'm not in a hurry.
You know, I think I had a very, very idealistic version of the world and people and myself, like in high school. Like there was a more defined, this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do,
Mm.
and like expectations of yourself were like pretty high. I think this is me like thinking about when I was 18, that version of myself, I
Mm.
think, versus I think over the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years, realizing that at the end of the day, you kind of need to just do the best that you can. Like there can't be
Mm.
one definition of this is the thing to do and this is what's right, and like if you're not doing this then you're kind of falling short.
Mm.
But just like giving yourself a little bit more grace of like your best can look different on different days, and
Mm.
sometimes being 50% functional is the best, and it's sometimes getting out of bed is enough, and sometimes
Mm.
completely crushing it is possible, but that's not, all of that is not possible like every day. So
Mm.
I think reducing the stakes and reducing the bars and everything that you're holding yourself to, I think that's been more of a mindset shift for me.
Mm.
That I've probably still not conquered. Like I'm still pretty hard on myself, but I think I was more when I was young.
Mm.
But I don't know.
Interesting. Are there two pieces of advice you would have for 18-year-old Sanya?
Oh my God. Um, yeah, I
You're
think
doing
I
a
would.
walk
I
in the park with 18-year-old Sanya. What do you have to say to her?
I would say listen to your gut a little bit more. Don't keep ignoring your instincts. Um, and and like go for balance instead of like, yeah, just have some sort of semblance of balance instead of
Mm.
like burning out.
Mm.
I feel like there was a version of me that like went so hard at things for like 10 years that there is, it like accumulates over time, right? And then you're like, okay, I've been doing this and running at this pace for too long. Like
Mm.
it needs to stop at some point. It like, but anyway, so I would ask myself to be a little bit more balanced and pace myself.
Mm.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, uh, you would not have come to these conclusions if not the journey. So
this is true.
that is also interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. After all the quizzing and all the questions I've asked, you got to ask me one question, Sanya. What do you have for me?
What question do I have for you? If if I gave you like a if I gave you a magic wand right now,
Mm.
what is one thing you would do? Um, or what are two things you would do with it?
Mm.
Personal,
With respect to like
professional,
my life or the world or like
your
with
life. Your life.
my life,
So things you are seeking. Um,
things I'm seeking or things which I don't have, which I wave the wand and I get it.
yeah, and yeah. Or just
Is that
like,
it?
I guess like maybe putting it a little bit more
What would I change?
nuanced way of like, what are two things that if you could change today,
Hmm.
you would change that will give you more peace?
Hmm. 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 It's a very hard question. I mean, the most the one which comes top to mind is it's a very I mean, it's not very thing, but I don't know how you feel about it, but like life on a visa is perpetually stressful.
Mm,
I
yeah,
hate it.
yeah,
So if I had a wave a wand, like I don't know, like the yeah, like solve that problem.
yeah,
I don't know how you solve it. I mean, there are ways to solve it, but I just feel like I never thought that I would be at a spot wherein this is another
yeah,
decision criteria, or it's such an important like like force in any decision you make, or the
yeah,
lack of decision you can make. I don't like it.
yeah, fair. I hear you.
Um, so I would like to change that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the other thing I would like to change? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to change it, but I
Hmm.
guess that's the beauty of a magic wand. I feel like, or maybe let me phrase it differently. Until like 5 7 years ago, I think we all, or I personally lived in very close proximity to the people I was the closest with,
Yeah,
uh, and that is not the case anymore.
yeah.
Um, and
Jade Palace.
yeah, the Jade
Yeah,
Palace, people at Bain,
yeah.
and again, I don't know how you solve it. I don't know
Hmm.
if you should solve it, but I do feel that it's one of those terribly hard problems to solve, wherein just finding ways to overlap in
Yeah,
time and place and also in mindset, right? Like in your headspace, wherein
yeah.
say you're on holiday but you're truly on holiday, or you're visiting a friend but you're truly like there. You're not like, I got
There.
to dial into this fucking call at 8:12
Yeah,
a.m., which was what I
yeah.
was doing when I was in in DC.
Oh God. Yeah,
um
yeah,
it's so hard, and I feel like the
yeah,
fact that I do not see any solution to it is very demotivating. Like,
yeah,
you want it but it's not going to happen. It's pretty at the and as every year passes by, you slowly I slowly am coming to terms with it's never going to happen. Like, you can enjoy the memory of it, but it's not going to happen again.
oh, yeah,
So it's very depressing, but I guess, like, I think these two things is where magic wand would help, because I don't see a simple solution to any of this. Or
yeah,
I don't see a solution wherein the solution basically means compromising a lot of other stuff
yeah,
in all other things in life. And
yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready to do that.
It's
So,
true. That's one of the
yeah.
biggest ones for I think anyone in our generation of like, um, such like dispersed lives. Everyone's like living their own life in different parts of the world. And
Yeah.
like, funnily enough, I was talking to Ducky and Pranjal yesterday, and they brought it up. They brought up like that scene from Office. Have you seen The Office?
Hmm. Yeah.
In the
Oh, sorry.
end,
The Office. No,
yeah.
I've not seen The Office.
Okay. There's a Towards the end of the series, there's a line by one of the characters which goes like, "I wish someone told me we were in the good old days when we were living them."
Hmm.
And so, like, that's a little bit of like, you the kind of what you were saying is reminding me of that. Like, um, yeah, but
Yeah.
I
And I guess
definitely
maybe it
agree.
just means that it's like you gotta accept it and then like move, I won't say move on, but
Yeah,
maybe like the hope of trying to get to that basically means that you're not trying to reinvent it. Or
yeah,
maybe it would absolutely be possible wherein you start from scratch. It's only
yeah,
been 10 years and you didn't
yeah,
know these people, 12 years ago.
yeah,
And it's quite possible 12 years from now, it's probably not going to be the same people, it might be different people. But
yeah. It's
yeah,
true.
maybe that is what the positive thing is.
Love it.
But anyway, that
Okay.
is that. I think with that is a good time to wrap.
Yes.
Sunny, if people want to get in touch and want to follow all the interesting stuff you're doing, how best should they find you?
They
Is
can
it LinkedIn, Instagram,
Instagram or
Twitter?
LinkedIn, either.
Okay,
Yeah,
Instagram or LinkedIn.
yeah,
I will put the handles in
yes.
the show notes.
Sounds good.
And yeah, what time is it there? Like 12,
It's 10. No, no, it's
10,
10:15.
10:50. Okay, so not
Yeah.
too late. But what time do you
Not
usually like head to bed on an average day?
like on a weekend, I think it's like 1 a.m. I
Oh,
sleep
but
late on a
tonight is
weekend.
Saturday night. So
It is
thank
hard.
you for spending your Saturday night
Of
prime time.
course. It was so nice to see you. Thanks for setting this up. And maybe I will
Yeah,
catch you in, you'll be in Delhi in December
I will be in Delhi in December, but for a very
or
brief
many
period. Like
weddings.
for like, yes, for a
Yes.
wedding, and then there's another
Ha.
wedding in Goa. So I will be
Ha.
Delhi maybe like 2 3 days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
you?
Okay. Well, no, I will also be there. So we were talking about this yesterday. Pranjal Datti,
Hmm.
Chuck. I got myself invited to one of the weddings. I'm kidding.
Oh wow.
I'm kidding. But we were talking about meetings. So maybe I will catch you in.
Oh yes. So in a few
Yeah.
months.
Done.
Okay. Awesome. I think if you've enjoyed this conversation,
This was lovely.
you can consider subscribing to the podcast,
Yes.
or more
Yes.
importantly, like if you've enjoyed this chat with Sanya, you should consider dropping her a line. I'm sure if you haven't caught up with her, similar to me, maybe not exactly like me, but similar to most people on this podcast for a decade, this could be a good reason for you to message and say hi. We'll be back with a new episode, maybe hopefully in the next 2 weeks. But until then, thank you very much for listening, and thank you to Sanya for being so open and sharing through the pod.
Thanks,
Okay,
Reuben.
with that, we will go off the record.
All right.